Okay, so I will start now by welcome everybody to this session on future-proofing cybersecurity. And I think that is a very, very important topic in these days, and that has also been brought to the attention of the World Economic Forum's newly published Global Risk Report, where it took a very predominant area in the top of the list, unfortunately. And I don't think that there is any sign in the future that it will go lower on the list. I'm so happy to have a very strong panel here with me. So first of all, I have you, Kelly Sadlin, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Cloudflare, a very well-known cybersecurity company from the US.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Kelly, Bissell, I don't think you probably need an introduction, but anyway, I will. You are responsible for all security, basically, in the huge consultancy company Accenture, taking care of everything, and by that you have a huge area of responsibility in many, many countries with a very good visibility, and welcome to you as well.
Thanks, Troels.
But we are not only meeting the usual suspects from the West, we have actually reached out to Russia as well. And the last member of the panel is Dmitry Samartsev, who is the chief executive officer of a Russian security company, Bi.Zone, that has the privilege to, I would say, protect the majority of banks in Russia, including the biggest bank, Sberbank. And I think that you also have, you can share maybe later, that it's not just Western banks who are attacked by hackers, it's actually also Russian banks. So welcome to you, Dima. So the idea here is that we should have a short discussion and with the panelists on a number of questions, but the reason that we are meeting here is that there is a need for insight sharing. And I think one of the best stories you can maybe have on this was one I experienced myself. So when I was a CISO in a big British bank last year, I got a notification from Microsoft, as all of us does, that there was a patch update, and this patch update was critical. And there was actually 2 critical updates. And we do what we always do in a bank. You put them in the queue of all the other patches. And if you have a critical patch, you normally allow 30 days to patch them. And in a big bank, it will take you between 6 to 8 weeks to patch it. So roughly that's 3 months, and then you are secure. A couple of days later, my intelligence guys came to me and said, a group called Shadow Broker with links to Russia has uploaded on the deep net a sample of Eternal Blue, which is a very, very advanced spy tool that was stolen from the NSA, and that they have made available to hackers as the proof that if you join their hacker club, then you would get more of the same tools. Now my intelligence guy said to my technical guys, no criminals can use Eternal Blue as it is, but they need to weaponize it. That will take approximately 6 weeks, we estimate, to weaponize it. So we need now to take forward the patching from the bottom of the list to the top of the list. And we did so. And we patched, and we actually asked people to work in the weekend. And after 5 weeks, we had finalized our patching. And I guess 3 or 4 days later, WannaCry hit. The story here is not that I was lucky or had good staff. The story is here, why didn't I share this insight with other ones, and then we might not have had attacks and infection in more than 150 countries. And could we create a platform for that? And that is basically what this is all about. And I think this story proves that there is a need for this. So the first question, let me pose that to you, Kelly. What does the cyber community mean by insight sharing, and why does it not happen more often? And what are the key challenges?
It is a big challenge, and no company can solve this on their own. And I think we have to band together to figure out how do we share information across not only our peers in our industries, but across the globe as a whole as one team. And I think there are a lot of things in the way of that, such as our internal focus of our current company, as well as maybe some regulations across jurisdictions, countries. But we can solve this problem, and I'm glad that you're heading up the Center for Cybersecurity, because I think that's a mechanism by which we can come together.
And I definitely think that's one avenue, and as you said, I think that there's going to be multiple approaches to this. I do think there are some bright spots, and maybe I can highlight some to give an example. So at Cloudflare, we saw this problem, and less for the big bank in London, which has an amazing CISO, you have a great team, a lot of resources, but what about the other 350 million internet properties online who don't have those resources? And so at Cloudflare, we thought about this about 10 years ago, and we started to work on our idea. And today, we have over 12 million internet properties using Cloudflare. A lot of them are small businesses, developers are on the site, freelancers, hobbyists who have sites online. And what we do is, when there's a threat online, we can patch it for our customers in real time. And so whether it can be something as simple as a WordPress vulnerability, that yes, you should still go and upgrade your servers, absolutely, and patch them and put them in that queue. But in the interim, Cloudflare has done the patch on behalf of all of its customers to protect the visitors coming to the site. And so it's almost like an immune system for the internet. And I think that I'm very bullish on that model going forward of this crowdsourcing the threat data, being able to push these updates and patches on behalf of a large community of internet properties in real time. And again, you still have to do it on the server side, but if you can do it out at the network layer, it really helps decrease the risk area of some of these threat profiles.
It's a good point. Is there a danger that we have, I guess, to do some kind of prioritization and say that it's not all threats that needs to be treated in the same way? So how is it? And I think the word insight is a differentiator from the word information sharing or patch sharing. Because if you do that, that's more or less automatic, and that is of this threat and of this threat. And I think with insight in my world, it's about that somebody has assessed that, and that needs to be at least addressed in a different way than the, let's say, the mainstream. So Dima, how can we do that? And do you think there is a possibility?
Actually, if we're talking about WannaCry, so of course Cloudflare is a great technology. So we have made a POC, I think, for one of our digital businesses several years ago. But actually, the trouble is that a lot of companies think that they have good stuff, they have good expertise, they don't want to use clouds, they don't want to use cloud-based products, but they actually awful. And I had, as an investigation and forensics, huge forensics team in my region, I had to manage tens of industrial oil producing, etc., companies which were completely blocked by WannaCry. It was a very strange thing. So, and we started to move technologies from financial sector to the rest of the commercial market inside our region. So, because insight sharing, it's very good, but actually, the number of threats is huge and it's rising. And if you will try to share insights just between people, we will never succeed. So we have to try to do some kind of automative information sharing infrastructure, trusted for whole corporate companies and players, and this is a great challenge.
Yeah, and I would add one last thing. So I think Dmitry and Michelle are right. We need a platform so that when we update one, we update all.
Yep.
Okay. Second thing is context. So to know a WannaCry problem is going to infect all Microsoft devices, that's understanding of context. To know that a campaign's after ACH wire transfer processes, that's also context, because the way I look at that is very different from a vulnerability for a print server. So we have to understand context and then update all, if you will, in a sharing environment, right?
And you know, one of the things you said, Dmitry, is definitely true, where there is a little bit of an awareness issue where, and this is one thing where I feel like more security being talked about in the media, at home, is actually good. Because, you know, the cybersecurity industry really did itself a disservice the last 10 years, where it was almost relegated to the information security teams, your security expert, and the C-level executives weren't having the conversation. Therefore, they don't have the language, they don't know how to talk about it, they want to hide when something bad happens rather than talk about it. And so I think that the more we have shed transparency and visibility on, here are things that happened, here are the companies who dealt with it, here's what we're going to do next time, and we can share more and put it out, and to make it okay for businesses to sometimes make mistakes, I really think rising that level of both the vocabulary, understanding the right questions to ask, is very important, because otherwise people want to become a turtle and hide and be like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody something happened to me, and I think that's really bad for the future. We need people to be talking about threats they received, how they dealt with it, what they're doing to prepare themselves better, so that all tides rise.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, but and still you have sometimes that companies who have been a victim of an attack, and I underscore a victim of attack, is sometimes treated as a criminal, right? Because they have lost some data, so the regulators and everybody is all over them, and I think that is also not maybe really
healthy.
Some kind of helping for
That's right,
for that.
if the bank is, if a bank robber robs a bank, the teller is not at fault.
No.
So if a cyber criminal breaks into a bank and steals money, why is the bank at fault? So,
exactly.
But we make them the victim most of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
So if we go back to, because I was a bit optimistic now that Michelle and Dmitry and also you, Kelly, share that if we could find some kind of a platform that could probably help in one way to raise the cyber hygiene, because what we want to do is to make it more difficult for the cyber criminals to do
raise
their
the cost
mainstream.
of cybercrime.
Yes.
This is
So we raise the price of cybercrime, but let's now take it in a practical terms, because this is also something about companies having a business model. They normally work for their customers and not for everybody else. And how is it that we can, or is it at all realistic that you can do that without commercial interest, at least for some of it? And if so, any input on how?
Yeah. I mean, I would just say I think we've started in the market, but we haven't gone far enough. Because there are some platforms. I think you have a platform, you have a platform, I have a platform, but we need to figure out how do we actually connect platforms of platforms. Almost like a flotilla, if you will. And I think that we have to be able to understand that through the lens of industry so we can apply the context. And so, not to go back to the WEF CF, C4C, but it's really important. That's a mechanism by which we can come together and be able to share more effectively.
And would there then be a possibility that you might be able to share for some, and then other ones pay for this additional, so you can have both, so big corporations get an...
We have existing platform in our market, which we have built 2 years ago, so because of the situation. So the situation is that there are two protocols, STIX and TAXI, which are open source, which are...
We all use it, I think.
All of us are using it, and now we're the third committer in STIX and TAXI, and this is our investments, because we want to develop these protocols and to make them, to move them to enterprise level, and this is very easy to share using them. So, and actually, their critical information have to be free. It not be just not it's not about money. It's about saving costs, because when I am securing my systems and securing my clients, I am saving the cost. So, and this is my interest, and I am ready to invest. And of course, there are a lot of providers of threat intelligence, cybersecurity services, which can use these platforms like a marketplace to deliver their services. So if you want just to fix up the critical vulnerabilities, you can use it for free. If you want to receive some kind of additional service, you will have tens of providers, and you can choose and do that. It's not a problem.
I do think that it's hard to deny the importance of banding legitimate businesses and visitors together, sharing the data to help make the internet and society safer for everyone. I mean, that's incredibly important, and it'd be the first time where we can do that, I think. Whereas before, a lot of the illegitimate visitors, the hackers, they had more resources than each individual legitimate visitor. But if you ban the good guys' resources together, and you always going to have more, it's very powerful. Yeah. I will say, and again, I think in aggregate these things make a ton of sense, but it gets tricky very quickly. So let's say you are a journalist reporting on human rights abuses in Angola, and there are people trying to knock that site offline.
Yep.
Who do you share that data with? What if the Angolan government wants to know?
Yeah.
And how do you start to draw those lines? And I think that it's it's both other companies, it's other governments. I do think that it gets gray and tricky very quickly. And I think until we can solve and put some guardrails around those issues, it's going to become a friction point and a blocker to move to move the initiative forward in a meaningful way.
But this is actually the intro to the next question, which is that we have here goodwill, right? But we also have the practicality. And if we look out in the real world, trust is not really increasing. On the other hand, it's decreasing. And it's trust between users and tech companies, and it's trust to privacy, it's trust to maybe users and governments. It's between governments, right? And there is a new world order now where we skip alliances and we try to do things bilaterally and in a national way. And let's take an opening of the elephant in the room here. How are we able to see if we can create any kind of trust between those who have, let's say, just now we don't have China in the room, but we have Russia and we have the US, and let me represent Europe for that. How do we do, and do we have a fair chance? I hope.
Actually, I think that it's my personal opinion that in these days it's impossible to build trust between governments. Actually, it's impossible. But if we will talk about our group, we're in 22 countries. So, and if you will talk about Citigroup, they're in 50 plus countries. Yeah. So this is international companies. And actually, our main goals is to increase our revenue, our margin, save our clients and our systems and our infrastructure. So that is why we are ready to build trust between our partners on corporate sector. So actually, of course, we have to suit all the regulations, and we do that, all new laws, GDPR. We're trying to, suit all the regulations in the globe. Just because it's very important, we have to be transparent. But actually, there are no restrictions for information sharing regarding cybercrime. So, and on corporate level, we can build the trust. And this is a matter of time. And we can do it faster than our governments. This is a good thing. Yeah.
We've had a similar, I think, experience and success in the sense of, I think you bring up a lot of great points around trust has been a very key word I've heard a lot around Davos this week, where it's, I think whether trust is high or low, and I think it depends on what part of the ecosystem you're talking about. But us too, as a private company in the private sector, we've been able to be a very global company, work with partners around the world to help protect our customers and their visitors. 12 million internet properties is a lot. We see about every internet visitor several hundred times a day, and we're helping make sure that they're having a fast and safe experience. I think that how do you partner with the governments and the governments partnering with each other? I think there's still a lot of work to be done there, and a lot of open questions, and they may need to take a few steps back before we can move forward.
But that will, of course, not prevent the rest of us from trying to do what we can. So. What is it then we need to do to incentivize attribution, investigation, and prosecution of cyber criminals from a private sector perspective? What can we do here?
This is a difficult one because we can't always be absolute in that attribution. Can't be sure of that attribution. But I do believe that we should create a better mechanism with public and private partnerships and sharing. And we haven't worked that out yet. I mean, all of our governments are really struggling with that. But I think we do have to figure out what do we share, and when do we share it, with whom, and what do we expect back. And right now, generally, for most governments, the private sector will share information with the government and they get almost nothing back. Yeah. Okay? But I do think there's a willingness. We just have to work at it. And I do believe if we start with one small piece, if we start with maybe Interpol or Europol to figure out what very specific financial crime or other internet crime that we want to tackle, just as a pilot, and then we can expand from there. But just take one small thing and build upon it.
Yeah. And I will say, I do think that there are success stories today.
True.
I mean, you read about them in the news. We need to hold those up as examples of where it works well. Because there are examples where their private company and the public sector have come together and they have taken real criminals and gone to find them and gotten them offline. And we need to celebrate those and use them as models of how do we do this more at scale around the world. Because there are examples.
Yeah. I'm happy you mentioned it, but there are very, very few compared to.
I'm an optimist.
Actually, it's great you're an optimist, and
I just indicate what we're doing on the local, regional, and global level. On the regional level, so we're doing just a simple thing. If we see some kind of crime or malicious activity or something like that, we're making a report which suit the regulation of the country which we are. So, for example, if it's the bank of our subsidiary in Switzerland, it's Switzerland. In Russia, it's in Russia. We're doing the report, making the report, and sending it to law enforcement. And actually, last year we have sent more than 17,000 such kind of reports.
Oh, wow.
So, sometimes, for example, our Russian law enforcement is fed up of that, calling us and say, okay guys, we have a lot of information from you, we're fed up, we have to do something. So let's come and think what it is and what we can do. Unfortunately, capacity in Russian law enforcement is not so good. Yes, and so the competence is not so good as everywhere. So, and we have to help them. So on global level, we're trying to do similar things with Interpol, with Europol, with support of Center for Cybersecurity, but I think that we need one success story, and you are completely right. If we will build some kind of international success story and create the case when the cyber criminals, because of the corporate collaborations, would be sent to the jail, it will work, it will break the ice. It's my personal opinion.
So we all agree that if we can, for once, park nation-state activities a bit, we might maybe also park a bit of privacy. We have loads of problems in cyberspace. But let's now identify crime as one of the common things that we can maybe share information about, do something about, because we all don't like criminals to steal our identity, our money, and whatever. So there is a possibility here. What is it then that is? What is it holding us back from doing it?
I think the biggest thing is our focus. Because right now we've all been focused internally building what we need to do to protect that one client. And it takes effort to go share it with law enforcement. We don't have a means of communication that's the standard right now. And by all of a sudden, while we're trying to do that, the next issue pops up. So we go attack that issue. Right. So we have one issue around focus and resources, limited resources. The second thing I believe that we are trying to navigate through the complex regulatory issues that are across the board. So GDPR, I actually like GDPR because it's at least one framework I can work under across not only Europe but also North America and other areas too. But then when you have more than 250 different regulations in those jurisdictions, it makes it really difficult to solve.
The one thing I will say about your point on focus and limited resources, which I think we cannot underestimate the importance of, is especially on the law enforcement side, is I do think there's a little bit of a reskilling that needs to go on. Right. Because as you said, law enforcement, this is a new area. Cybercrime is new, it's rising, and just like executives don't necessarily have the right training and the skills and the language, I think that same is for the law enforcement. So they come, they ask for data, they're not even sure exactly what they need to go after the criminal, right? And so sometimes what happens is law enforcement asks for everything, because it's like, well, I don't know what I need, so I just need, give me everything you have. And again, as a business, well, I don't want to give you everything you have because of the privacy concerns, and do you really need it? It's impossible. Right? You're just like, no, can you please narrow your request of what you'd like? And so I do think, one, on the focus and the resources side, I do think there is a track where it's a little bit of some common language, some common terminology, some common use cases. Even starting that platform, I actually think would get the initiative going off quicker because it will help give people a common language to use.
But we just need a case management system.
Right.
I mean, to use that, we need in law enforcement, you have a case management system, right? We don't really use it in the private sector, but we need one that when we have an issue, we put it in the case management that's connected to Interpol or other jurisdictions. That way we know exactly what we put in there and what we don't, and we can protect ourselves.
And I completely agree with you guys. And
panels are not interesting when we all agree.
But actually, so the situation is, the sad story is, first part of the sad story is that when the person in law enforcement is becoming experienced enough, he's going to the private sector. Here's an example.
That is true.
So, and I have tens of partners in UBS and a lot of international banks and technological companies which actually from law enforcement. So, agreed. And the second issue is that I think the key is we have to, I don't know how, but maybe secondment program might work. So because if you will invest a lot of money to raise capacity in law enforcement, all these experienced people will go to the private sector because we are paying more. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to pay more in police.
Of course not.
I think that secondment is a good idea as well. And maybe there's not one answer, but a few answers that really can make a big difference, right?
So I think you'll be happy to hear that we have signed an MOU with Interpol. So, and one of the areas, and we have discussed this, Kelly, is capacity building with Interpol in some areas, which I think is very pressing, especially in some of the emerging countries where we see that cyber criminals settle down. And if I call the police there and ask them to take an image of a server, they will probably take a picture of it and send back to me instead. So we need to do something instead. The other thing we are investing a bit in is a cybersecurity academy for CISOs globally to find a way to deal with this secondment. What would that make any, do you think, positive change in any way? Would you be interested in helping us doing that?
Yeah, because I believe the evolution of the CISO is evolving at a faster pace than many CISOs can adapt. And so an academy like you're talking about is good, not just for them, the leader of that security group, but also other groups like the SOC or the forensics team or the application security team or others. So I think that would be really beneficial for the entire marketplace.
And I would even go a step further. I really think CEOs need to be coming to the academy, the COOs need to be coming, chief marketing officers need to be coming to the academy. I really do think that we need to widen. Really, if you are a leader today, you just need to understand the basics of security. And the truth is, it's not that complicated. I mean, sure, the very complicated things you need to have an amazing CISO and information security compliance team to run with. But if we just everyone got the ABCs of cybersecurity right, understood a lot more, we'd be much safer in the business world and the private sector. So I love this idea of an academy.
Very encouraging, and I'll come back to you on that. We only have 5 minutes left, and we've been speaking about the situation as it is now. I think we agree on that it will probably not get better in the future, right? So IoT will change it, mobile will change it, cloud, AI, what have you. That will be a lot of good things, and we are not here to sell fear, but to protect hope. But how can we protect hope, and what is the future of fighting cybercrime, doing prevention, either to tech, to people, to processes? And can I have some of your good input for that? And should we start with you, Kelly, and then we go to...
Please.
Okay. Please. I mean, I think there are a few things, and I am hopeful for the future. I think that companies need to really change the way they think about security in their own group. So not as an IT problem, but a business risk problem. Okay. They also need if they could do one thing, such as hold their lines of business managers responsible for security, that will cause them to act in the right way and even partner with the IT organizations in the right way. Second thing, I think the technology vendors in the marketplace, the tech companies who actually are the internet, need to change their product. I mean, even the protocols that we use today, like IPv6 and so forth, are not really built for security. They're built for sharing. And so we do have to change the infrastructure of security. And then the last thing, I think that we need to really have a unified set of regulations. And that's going to be, that's the hardest thing to solve.
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that can be solvable. But if we can actually make it more uniform, like the Paris Agreement that was just signed a couple of months ago, is a step in the right direction as far as principles by which we're going to follow. So I would start with those things, and then the natural ecosystem, we're already starting to kind of band together, if you will. And I think we need to continue and quicken that pace to band together to be able to share. Yeah,
and I agree with you. And we need to do something more on the Paris call, because not even US have signed it yet, but I hope that they will at some point. India,
Accenture
signed
it.
So that's good, and so did the forum. So that's very good. Dima, what is your view?
So I'm supporting the ideas of Kelly. So but actually I really don't agree. So
here we go. That's good.
With the idea that we can change legal environment fast. Actually, this is the relations between governments, and we can't affect them. But first of all, just put all these issues to corporate level from the government. This is my first point. It will work. It might work, I think. Second, automotive information sharing platform or platform of platforms using the same protocols and as a standard. And the third one, secondment to law enforcement.
Yeah.
If we will push it towards the targets, it will work.
Michelle, what is your take?
I joked earlier that I am an optimist by nature, and so I think 10 years from now, cybersecurity is no longer going to be an issue. Like, I really think that we're going to be able to solve this in the next 10 years. Right now it's serious, but I am very optimistic that 10 years from now, this issue is going to be solved because of a lot of these different initiatives and the technology and whatnot. So I think it's great we're talking about it and whatnot. One other thing, because again, there's been a lot of great ideas here that I sadly agree with, but the one that I will add that I don't think gets talked a lot about, you touched on it a little bit, is the internal culture of security at companies, where, again, this is not your IT team's job. It is not your chief security officer's job. It's if you are an employee at a company, you have a security responsibility to keeping your customers and yourself and the company safe. And I think companies can do a lot more to build it into their culture, because culture will last much longer than any technology shift. And so I'll give you some examples. At Cloudflare, our sales team is incredibly security aware. So at the end of the quarter, big time, very busy time for an enterprise company. You got a lot of contracts in. And one of our sales team did not know about this an additional contract coming in, an insertion order that was coming in, and thought it was a phishing attack and forwarded it to our security incident response team. And to have your sales team at the end of quarter forwarding potential contracts to your security incident saying, "Oh, I wasn't expecting this. I think there's something fishy here," I think is a real testament to good internal culture. And I think more companies also today need to do that, because again, it's every employee has a responsibility, and we have to give them the tools, understand, and training on how to do that.
So security is not something for them or for tech, or it's everybody.
It's
right?
everybody.
And with that very, very positive note, I think I can say thank you for those who were in the room, those who listened also, and maybe will listen to it later. And thank you. I think we have an optimistic approach to the future. We also have to be realistic, of course, and I'm very realistic, so I'm not smiling as much as they are. But still, we should be optimistic, and we will survive the internet. It will be a bumpy road, but so will humanity. Thank you very much, panel.
Thank you so much. Thank you.